at the 3-4s that you went against, especially late in the year. Nebraska, completely different type of 3-4 than in Madison you saw. However, you seemed in the second half you switched, you did some zone, some gap. It seemed to work, and then it seemed like your tempo, especially in the interior offensive line, was a little bit not slower, but it really was paid off because it kept the backers from shooting there. I mean, how do you think that's going to affect going forward, especially when you look at Wisconsin, because that's the hill you got to climb every year? How do you think that's what you guys did blocking wise will help pay off in the future, possibly against the 3-4 in
we're
Wisconsin?
all chasing Wisconsin. If you're in the western half of our conference, you're chasing Wisconsin. And I know this: if you want to win a Big Ten championship, the road goes through Madison. I think we all saw that this year. And in my opinion, those guys didn't get enough credit as the year went on. That's a really good football team. In fact, I was watching them play at the end of the year, and they're playing the last game, right? And it's not in doubt. They're up 7 scores. And somehow the announcers are so bored with how good Wisconsin is that they spend 10 minutes talking about the other team's head coach. And those guys are getting beat by 5 touchdowns or whatever it was. Wisconsin is a really good football team that's not real exciting because they're just really good at what they do. They don't pressure you. They don't blitz a whole lot. They do what they do. They play the way they play. If you look at how we played against Nebraska, it's a little bit different defense. I know they're a 3-4 on their depth chart, and the way they list it, they don't really play that way. And what we had to do is slow some things down just because we had some things that we thought were there. We just were overrunning some things, and they were playing a little bit slower. They had a different plan for us. They were going to try to undercut some things. Once we got that handled, we were okay. In the Wisconsin game, I think if I look back, if I have one regret against that team in that game, I thought we were running the ball better than maybe even we had anticipated going in. You would have liked to have been able to stay with that a little bit more, but we didn't. And part of it was the way the game went, and part of it is on me. Just having a little bit more patience and being willing to grind things out a little bit. But at the end of the day, if you don't convert on third down, it's going to be really difficult to sustain any of those drives, no matter what kind of situation you're in. So, when you look at that, I know this. We play really good defenses in this conference, whether they're 3-4 or 4-down teams, over, under, all that stuff. And, we'll have another one joining the conference now. I'm pretty familiar with those guys and their coordinators. So it's going to be a challenge every week. And I think what we need to do is just make sure that what you never want to do is let the defense dictate the terms to you and start changing because of what they do. You want to make sure that whatever you do can handle all those things across the board, and you can pretty much live in the world you're in. And whether it's the zone schemes or the gap schemes, we mix those in pretty much all year against all teams. Just trying to find the matchups and the formations where you get some numbers that are, if you're us, you're never going to get beneficial numbers typically, but if you can just get some even numbers, that's usually pretty good.
Well, against Wisconsin there, you were on first down, I think you ran for 3.5 yards per carry, which against Wisconsin is probably 2 more than most teams.
Sure, we'll take that against anybody.
But then, second down, you threw a lot, and then it was incomplete almost every time, and then you were 3rd and 7. In hindsight, is it maybe overthinking to throw on second down, or is it just the way you wanted to pick up a chunk?
It's just the way the game went, but you like to have balance. We track all those things, and you go into certain games, and maybe you want to throw the ball 70% of the time on first down and run it 30%, or maybe you want to run it 40%, 60%. You try to track all those things, and you just want to make sure that the predictability and the percentages are not telling people things.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to balance that with is sometimes the feel of how a game's going. And sometimes you get totally off the rails based on what you thought going in because something's going really well. If you go in there and all of a sudden you're running the ball extremely well and there's nothing they can do to answer that, you don't want to get too far away from that. Kind of like the Nebraska game. We didn't get real creative with the play call, and once we figured out kind of where we wanted to live in that game, we just tried to go and go with some tempo and go as fast as we can versus a game like the Wisconsin game where you're searching a little bit, and you want to move the ball the best you can, and you end up throwing a little bit. But yeah, if you're asking me in retrospect, sure, shoot, I wish we would have run the ball every play in that game because we didn't throw it very well.